so dumb. Don't they know there's no escape from Michael Myers? Why do they even bother running? Come on, stupid TV. I'll be like him someday. I want people to make movies about me. What do you think, buddy? Do you think I have what it takes? It sure would make it a lot quieter around here if I could just get rid of them all. Michael Myers could do it in a flash. Man, all those other loser villains have nothing on him. I can't believe Dad won't let me go trick-or-treating on Halloween. That piece of old trash won't let us go out. What does he think I am? Some kind of powerless little wimp? If he would just leave already, it would be fine. But no, he has to stay here and yell at Mom all night. I hate them so much. That's it. It doesn't matter how scared we are of Dad. Michael Myers isn't scared of anybody. Everybody is afraid of him. If we have to wait much longer, Halloween will be over, and we won't have gone trick-or-treating at all. So if Dad won't leave, then I will.
And where are you going, you little creep?
To go trick-or-treating. What do you think?
You idiot! You know neither of us can leave while Dad is still down there.
Shut up! I know you're not going trick-or-treating. You just want to see your boyfriend. What is he, the fourth one this week?
Mike, get back here. You'll ruin it for the both of us.
And the other one is just as much a devil spawn as you!
Do you even remember her name?
Of course I do! She's called Clone of the Woman Who Ruined My Life!
I swear to God, if you disrespect your daughter one more time...
What are you gonna do? Complain?
I don't understand what you want from me!
Stop crying! Why are you wearing that stupid mask? It's my Halloween costume. My Halloween costume. Spit it out or just shut up!
Stop making fun of him!
Do not tell me what to do, you brainless bimbo! Get back in the kitchen! Maybe you should keep that mask on at all time, little guy. Nobody wants to see that ugly face of yours. Now crawl back to the hole you came from so I can finish talking with your wench of a mother. No, Dad, I'm going trick-or-treating. What did you just say? Did I just hear you say no? You heard me? Why, you little punk! I ought to rip your brains out! Get back here! Open this door, you little rat! I paid for it! I'll break it down if I have to, and you're gonna regret it! So open up now! The longer you make me wait, the worse it's gonna get! You're just like your backstabbing mother! You'll get what's coming to you, boy! Mark my words! I hate you, Dad, but I can't wait for you to come home and see what you made me do.
Michael, what are you doing in my room? Get out! Michael? Stop it! Don't come any closer! Hey, whore! Will you keep it down? No naughty business! Hank, is that you? Are you finally back from cheating on me? Is that a ghost?
So, Mike, do you regret what you did to your mother and sister? No. Okay, but walk me through this, Michael. What do you remember when you were standing in your mom's room that night? What was going through your head? Like, can you describe anything you saw or heard? A wet thud. I see. Do you really believe that you are the real Michael Myers? This story was inspired by a disturbing Halloween case that took place in 2012. A male suspect named Jack Evans confessed that he took out his own mother and sister because he was inspired by the 2007 remake of the Halloween movie. Evans said that watching the movie gave him the idea because he was amazed at how at ease the boy was during the slayings and how little remorse he had. Evans also goes on to disclose a disturbing 4-page confession released during his trial, which spells out in intricate, matter-of-fact detail the thoughts and actions in the hours leading up to and during the slaying, which you can see here below. He has since been sentenced accordingly. Another chilling case that had the same Michael Myers-esque vibe similar to Evans' case was from a male suspect named Zachary Davis. He carried his attack in similar fashion and was even interviewed by Dr. Phil on his TV show. Both suspects have been highly compared on the internet as the real-life Michael Myers.
And what did it sound like?
There was this wet thumping sound.
Every time Halloween came around the corner, I hated it. Not that I necessarily minded the holiday as a whole, but every year my parents made me take my younger brother Billy out trick-or-treating. I was in my 20s, so I was way too old to trick-or-treat myself. I was just stuck playing the parenting role somehow. My mom said that it was a good bonding experience for my brother and I, but I just think that she didn't want to do it. Most of the time I ended up having to take my brother's friends too. That just made it worse since I had even more kids to keep track of. This year it would be just me and my brother though. We had just recently moved and didn't really know anyone in our neighborhood. The whole area was new to us, and we'd only just started to become more familiar with it. Honestly, I was a little worried about getting lost while we were out. I didn't have the greatest sense of direction. When night finally came, my brother dressed as Batman. It was actually a pretty good costume. At least it didn't make me feel that embarrassed walking around with him. We started pretty early because my brother didn't want all of the good candy to be taken. I walked him around the neighborhood for a good while. I noticed that all of the houses seemed to be a little older here. After about an hour, I was ready to be done with it, but my brother insisted that we had to continue until his bag was full to the brim. Of course, once he filled that bag, I had to carry it around while he brought out a fresh bag to fill up. It was pretty exhausting walking around with him. He didn't seem tired at all though. He just wanted to get as much candy as he possibly could. I guess I couldn't really blame him. I just wished that we could finish soon. We must have been trick-or-treating for 3 straight hours when we came across a creepy-looking house near the end of a street. There was a sign out front that said something like, "Come in for a bite." I just thought it was some lame Halloween haunted house gig, so I stupidly let my brother go inside alone while I waited out front. I wasn't in the mood to have some random teenager try to scare me. Then, a few minutes later, I heard something shocking. A blood-curdling scream rang out from inside the house. It sounded like my brother. I immediately dropped the bag of candy and ran inside. It was dark as hell. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight to look around. The place was so creepy. It looked like an abandoned house. I screamed for my brother.
Billy? Where are you?
There was no response. Everything was dead silent. It was like a tomb. I slowly walked deeper into the house, scared out of my mind. I had no idea where my brother could have gone. I just hoped that I wasn't too late. Then suddenly, as I rounded the corner, I came upon a large man dressed as Mario standing motionless in the hallway, just staring at me. I was scared shitless. I felt frozen to the floor, but I knew that I had to find my brother, so I forced myself to speak. I demanded to know where my brother was.
Where is he? What have you done with him?
I tried to sound tough, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't help but sound scared as hell. My voice quivered when I spoke. The Mario just stood there, still staring at me, and not saying a word. I had my phone pointed at him since I was using the flashlight, so I took a picture of the man and again demanded to know where my brother was. He still didn't say a word. Then, Out of nowhere, the Mario charged at me. He started screaming and laughing while he grabbed my throat and tried to strangle me. He sounded like a lunatic. I managed to break free from him and sprinted like hell out of the house. There, I miraculously saw my brother standing out front. I shouted at him, "Run!" We both abandoned the candy and ran as fast as we could all the way back to our house. When we got there, we raced inside and locked the door. We both stood there for a moment, out of breath and terrified. I checked out the window to see if the Mario man had followed us home. There was no one there. We told our parents everything. At first, they thought we were just joking around, but after seeing the fear on our faces, they started to believe us. They asked us which house it was so that they could call the police, but I stupidly hadn't written down the address or taken a picture of the house. I had no idea where it was, since it was a new neighborhood. The next day, something else disturbing happened. I opened the front door to go check the mail, and found my brother's 2 bags of candy sitting on the doorstep. I thought that I had to be mistaken. Some kid had probably just left their candy there last night. But when I looked closer, I was sure they were the same bags. I couldn't believe it. I looked around to see if anyone was watching me, but the street was deserted. My parents decided that we had to file a police report. My brother and I did the best that we could in describing the house, and said that it had a "come in for a bite" sign out front. The police looked into it, but they never found anything. The only evidence that I had of the whole ordeal was the picture that I had taken of Mario. It was terrifying, but I was glad that I had it. It made me sure that it had really happened. My family and I ended up selling the house and moving to a new neighborhood. We couldn't deal with the constant paranoia that the Mario knew where we lived. My brother never wanted to go trick-or-treating again after that night. This video was inspired by a story submitted by a subscriber. The subscriber alleges that the events took place on Halloween of 2016, when he took his little brother out for trick-or-treating. The subscriber claims that he was actually able to take a photograph of the abductor dressed as Mario despite the danger he was in, and has attached it to the email. Here's what it looked like. As frightening as this was, the pair were able to escape without any injuries and the house was never found. The only slight recollection of the house that the subscriber could remember was that it had one of those Halloween "come in for a bite" signs on the front lawn. With minimal evidence and description, police were unable to track the abductor as he cleverly removed the sign after the attempted abduction of the little brother.
Alright, let's get this Halloween started, shall we? I'm sure these trick-or-treaters are gonna love this. Definitely gonna need some lollipops, some chocolate, some chips. Ooh, definitely some Skittles. Starbursts. Damn, I don't remember chocolate bars being this thick. I guess my ex would know. Crap, it's getting late. Them damn kids are gonna be here any minute. Damn it! I'm sure this is enough to feed the entire neighborhood. I bet everyone will think I'm the real Candyman after tonight. That should do it, and just in time. Seems pretty dark outside now. Alright, and now the games begin. Oof, that was quick.
Trick or treat!
Hey, Mario and Luigi! You guys are my first trick-or-treaters of the night, so you both get a fistful. Here you go. And here you go. That's all you're getting. How about a thank you? No? Okay. Then get the hell out of here! Stupid kids. Alright, looks like we have Bikini Bottom in the house.
Trick or treat!
Trick or treat! Oh. Sorry everyone, but this is the last of my candy, so I can only give you one each.
Oh, what? And not one for me?
Well, what's your costume?
Isn't it obvious? They call me Mermaid Man, but you can call me anytime.
I'm good.
Or you can call me Mermaid Woman, but you can just call me a beautiful beautiful mermaid.
You sure you're not a whale?
Excuse me? What did you say?
No, I meant Pearl. Pearl the whale. She's my favorite character.
And what did you dress up as? Maybe you could be my barnacle boy.
No thanks. I'm not dressing up this year.
That's not what I meant, dummy. Tell me, do you have Barnacle Boy's nose in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
Hey, stop looking at me like that. There are trick-or-treaters out here.
Oh, there are? I can fix that. Hey, everyone! Stay away from my husband's house or the seashells come off! Shoo! Go away and come back next year!
Wait! What the hell are you doing?
They're leaving us so we can be alone together.
This isn't the nursing home, lady!
All I want for Halloween is you!
Lady, stop it! You're harassing me!
Do you have candy for me, boy?
Hey, stay back! This candy is only for kids, not saggy old people like you. You had your time.
Those are not sags. Those are just my muscles resting.
Here, lady. Here's my last piece of candy.
That's not the type of candy I was hoping for.
What are you talking about? What is it that you want?
I want a different kind of lollipop.
Oh, God. Hell no. Not a chance. You're disgusting.
Shut up and pay up, Barnacle Boy. I want some Squidward in my Krabby Patty now.
Lady, you need to leave me the hell alone.
Yeah, right. You don't even have the balls. You know what they say about a mouthful of gums.
Get away from me. I don't have any more candy and I'm not gonna do anything with you.
Well then, fine. I'm calling the cops and having them arrest you for harassing me.
What? You're the one who's harassing me.
Who do you think they'll believe? The mean, jerky man or the sweet little old lady?
There's nothing sweet or little about you. They're gonna believe me.
Do you want to take that chance?
Fine. I'll go look in my kitchen for some extra candy. Just stay here.
Hurry up in there! I've got other houses to hit tonight!
Just give me a second! I'm looking for candy, damn it! Damn it, I've got nothing left. That old hag isn't going to leave me alone. What the hell are you doing in my house? Hey, what's wrong with you? What's your problem, lady?
My problem is I haven't gotten what I wanted yet. I demand payment for the way you've mistreated me. I'll take cash or other methods. Pay up, Barnacle Boy!
All right, that's it. You're done. Get out of here.
How does it feel to know I'm the superior one in the duo, you little punk? I want to sit on that Barnacle Boy nose.
This is a B&E, lady. You're breaking and entering. Get out of my house or I'm calling the cops.
I want candy. Feed me candy. I need candy now.
Help! Someone get their grandma! Help me!
You're lucky I like my men with a little more backbone than you.
So this is what Halloween has come to. This animation was inspired by a story submitted by a viewer who claims an older woman was acting like a Karen while trick-or-treating around her neighborhood. Allegedly, the Karen would harass multiple houses if they refused or didn't give her enough candy, despite trick-or-treating at her old age. The viewer also claims that the woman even forcibly took large handfuls of candy from multiple homeowners' candy bowls and would allegedly run off. It was unknown if the woman was arrested or not, but from what the viewer said, multiple complaints were filed that night. Where the hell am I? No. This has to be a nightmare. This can't be real. Damn it! Why can't I wake up? Please, let me wake up in my bed. Please, I want to go home. No! Why? God, what's going on? Why? What kind of place is this? Somebody get me out of here! Please! Someone help me! I don't know what kind of sick joke this is, but it isn't funny! Let me out! Ah! What the hell? Hey, you! Help me, please! You gotta get me off this hook! Come on, get over here! If you help me, I'll help you! Just please get me down from here! I'll be quiet. I swear, I'll do whatever you want. Just please, help me! I can't move! Yes, come on, hurry! This thing hurts really bad! Fine, I'm sorry. I just don't know what's going on. Do you? What are you doing? Help me! Do something! I can't get down by myself! Don't just stand there, come on! You gotta be kidding me. Fine, if I stay quiet, will you help me for Christ's sake? Yeah, keep going. Come on, almost there. Damn! What? Why did you stop? Can't you just lift me a little bit? Holy crap. How long have you been down here? Where even are we? Hey, what was that? What's going on? Who's coming? Oh my god, what the hell is going on? I need to get the hell out of here! Please, someone save me! Ah! Damn it! Screw this! Yes! This story was inspired by an American serial killer named Ed Gein, whose gruesome crimes gained worldwide notoriety and inspired numerous books and horror films. He was also known as the Butcher of Plainfield. Ed's crimes gathered notoriety in 1957 after authorities discovered that he had dug up corpses from local graveyards and had made so-called trophies using their skin and bones. Ed had also confessed to the slaying of 2 female victims in the past. However, police believe it was a lot more than just that.
This presentation may contain language and scenes which may be objectionable to certain individuals. Viewer discretion is advised.
Halloween is getting closer and closer, but instead of being excited about it like I used to be, this year, I can't stop thinking about what happened last Halloween. About 6 months earlier, a new family moved into the house next door to mine. They have a son about my age named Ivan. I hated him instantly, because he became obsessed with me the second he realized his next door neighbor was a cute girl. It was even obvious to my parents that he had a crush on me, but they didn't see Ivan the way I did. He's a total creep. And in my opinion, he's one of the ugliest people I've ever met. I rejected him every time he asked me, but even when I was mean to him, he couldn't take no for an answer. He liked to leave for school at the same time I did so he could follow me to class. And I knew he was watching me from his house too, because I couldn't even step outside to throw away the trash for my parents without him running up to give me weird compliments. No matter what I said to him, he refused to take the hint that I obviously didn't want him around. Unfortunately, he kept finding ways to insert himself into my life, usually by dumb luck and help from our parents, who became friends early on. My parents used to drag me over to his house, or even invite them over to our house so the four of them could drink wine and talk about the HOA and other stupid crap, while I had to deal with Ivan breathing down my neck. I still can't get over how oblivious my parents were at the time. They even kept suggesting that I hang out with him in his room if I didn't want to be around the adults. Ivan's parents and my parents just kept talking and becoming closer friends, which meant they expected Ivan and I to become friends too. Part of me thinks they were secretly trying to make us get together, which is why they let him creep on me so much. Over time, he managed to beg me enough that I gave him my social media handles, and even my phone number, all of which I severely regret. Once he could get to me on my phone, I couldn't even be away from him in my own room. He texted me every 5 minutes with some stupid meme or an invitation to hang out with him or a bunch of self-pitying and crying because I was ignoring him. I tried to tell my parents about this so they could do something about it, or at least stop playing into Ivan's BS, but they shrugged it off. They always said a bunch of stuff like that's just how boys are when they like a girl, and I should give them a chance. For 6 months this is what I dealt with, and nobody helped me. I even lost friends, because everyone knew wherever I went, Ivan would show up. Everything came to a head on Halloween last year. I dressed up as Pikachu, and my boneheaded parents told Ivan so he could dress up as Ash. I was furious, but they thought it was so adorable that we had matching costumes. Even worse, when I was about to leave to go trick-or-treating, they said Ivan had to go with me because it wasn't safe for a girl to walk around on her own. Then, they ran off to Ivan's house so they could have another one of their wine parties. My Halloween was ruined before it even started. Ivan was at his absolute worst that night, being creepier than he had ever been before. He kept saying weird stuff about how he wanted to make me faint like a Pokemon from too many pound attacks, and then capture me in a Pokeball so he could keep me forever. He kept grabbing my hand too, but I pulled it away every time. I didn't even care about getting candy at that point. I just wanted to get it over with and go home. I only walked around for about half an hour before I headed back. Ivan begged me to stay out, but I made up a lie about how I was feeling sick and I couldn't keep going. Of course, he followed me to my house to make sure I got home okay, and then he walked me up to my door. My parents were still at Ivan's house. When he realized we were alone, he made his move. I see your candy sack is a little empty. If I give you all of my candy, would you let me get in bed with you?
No! Why can't you just leave me alone?
Stop pulling out on me! I'm tired of waiting!
Ivan grabbed me and dragged me into my house, then kicked the door closed. I fought back and screamed, but nobody was home. Ivan was strong enough to restrain me, no matter how hard I tried to hit him and get away. He put me in a headlock and started to squeeze the life out of my neck. In just a few seconds, everything started to go dark and I felt heavier and heavier. At the last moment, right before I passed out, my parents burst through the door. Ivan's parents were right behind him too. I almost thought they were going to let it happen, but thankfully they didn't. My parents were in shock as Ivan's dad started to beat him right there in my house. After my mom came to me and saw what happened, she had my dad call the police. All of a sudden, Ivan's parents begged them not to get the police involved, claiming they could discipline their son without help from anyone else. But my parents didn't listen. Thank God for that. Ivan got arrested and ended up spending a few weeks in juvie. Then after that, he never touched me. He still watches me, however, and it still scares me. I have to wonder how deep his hatred is. I already know what he's capable of, but I don't know what's stopping him. My parents' friendship with Ivan's parents is also non-existent, which I'm glad is the case. They give us dirty looks when they see us and yell nasty things at us every chance they get. They're pretty deluded for being mad at a girl and her parents for calling the cops on their son after he attacked her in her own home. But at least there's no mystery about how he turned out the way he did. This story was submitted by a viewer who claims this happened to her last Halloween. The viewer has mentioned that ever since her family called the cops on the neighbor's son, that family has since been doing subtle things to piss her family off as a tactic to get back at them, like leaving trash on their lawn, playing loud music during the day, and even giving them the cold shoulder when they would encounter each other. The viewer also claims she constantly fears for hers and her family's safety, as she doesn't know what her neighbors will do next, and feels like if they call the cops on them again, something worse will happen.
Happy Halloween, homie. This is gonna be your best birthday ever. Thanks, bro. What do you mean by that? Oh, don't worry. Just know it's gonna be killer. I'll explain when I get there. Wait, are you headed here now? I guess I forgot to let you know. Surprise! Hey man, it's me! Open up! Hold on a sec, dude. I'm in the middle of something. Hurry up! I don't have all day! Shut up! It's my birthday! What's taking so long? Open up! I'm coming! Finally! Jeez, man, what happened to you? Never mind that. I got you a ticket to the best haunted house in the world for your birthday. But don't worry, you don't have to thank me. Well, thanks. I mean, okay. Wait, which one? Screamers? Halloween Horror Nights? No and no. Better. Here. This is only one ticket. What about you? Aren't you gonna come with me? No. It's a solo adventure. I'm confused. Have you already done it? Yeah. Don't worry, man, I promise. It's a crazy experience. You're gonna love it. You'll never feel more alive. Listen, I've never even heard of this McKinney Manor before. Besides, I already have plans for the day. Really? What plans? Carving pumpkins and giving out candy to trick-or-treaters like an old person? Lame. It's too late for that. The ticket was expensive, damn it. These people don't do refunds. I don't even know who these people are. That doesn't matter. If you don't go through with this, you better pay me back. No way, man. I didn't agree to any of this. If you don't give me my money back, then I'll take it from you. Okay, I'll do it. Just let go of me. You won't regret this. What even is this? Shh, it's supposed to be a surprise. Just sign this. What? This is ridiculous. What am I getting myself into? Just sign it! Okay, fine. This better not be some kind of joke. Sign here, and here, and here, and here. Hey, it's me. We're ready to go. Yeah, he signed it and everything. Alright, see you soon. Who was that? That was your VIP escort. They're right around the corner. They've been waiting for you. Ho, VIP escort? Just sit tight and I promise that this will be the best birthday ever. Alright, thanks man. You're welcome, bro. Looks like they're here. Wait, that's them? Just go along with whatever they say. What are you talking about? What's going on?
Hey, stop! Stop it! What are you doing? You messed up this time!
Bye, have a great time.
Hey, stop! You bastard! How could you do this to me? You guys, stop! I didn't agree to this! He tricked me! Take me back! Stop! Yeah, we heard it all before. Stop! What are you doing? I swear to God, you're making a mistake! Shut up and stop moving! The more you piss me off, the worse this is gonna get for you. Have you ever choked on your own blood before? What? No! You're about to. No, please! You can't! I don't want any of it!
That's enough of that. I thought we told you to shut up.
By the time we're done with you, you'll experience agony you never thought possible. You'll wish you were dead. You'll beg us to kill you, but we won't unless we feel like it. Looks like we got a fighter. Knock him out. Won't be needing this anymore, cause nobody'll hear you scream.
Please let me go. I didn't sign up for this. It was my friend. Please. Shh. If you want to get out of here, then you better sell your soul. You hear me? I'll do anything. You'll do anything?
Yes. Would you impale yourself on a spike?
What?
Would you impale yourself on a spike?
Yes, I would.
Say it!
I'll impale myself on a spike.
Would you eat your own intestines after we cut you open and rip them out?
Yes, I'll eat my own intestines.
I don't believe him. Get the blood.
You're nothing. You're less than nothing. You're the crap on the bottom of my boot. Why don't we get everyone you love tied up right in front of you so you can eat their intestines as you watch them bleed out and scream in agony? No, please. I'll do anything you want. I'll eat the crap off the bottom of your boot. I'll be your slave. Just don't hurt anyone else.
You're almost there. You actually broke a lot faster than we thought you would, Whip. But we're not quite finished with you yet. We want to show you that there's no such thing as horror beyond comprehension. This story was inspired by an American haunted house attraction called McCamey Manor, which is ran by a man named Russ McCamey. The house operates year-round, offering visitors a tour that can last up to 8 hours. The attraction is a survival horror-style haunted house which is known for its extreme forms of scaring its guests, including various forms of physical and psychological torture, including having bones broken, teeth removed without anesthesia, and being sedated with undisclosed substances. The scare tactics are so extreme to the point where guests are forced to sign a liability waiver to participate. Items on the waiver include the inability to leave the experience without the staff's permission. McCamey Manor has attracted significant controversy, criticism, and media scrutiny around the world, but despite this, they're still running and open for guests in Nashville, Tennessee, and Huntsville, Alabama.
This is the scariest thing I have ever experienced. It happened back in 2015. I was still in school and went trick-or-treating every year with my friends Ryan, Mike, and Jesse. All of us were lazy and went as different members of the Wiggles, an old kids music group, which meant all we had to do was wear black pants and each pick a different colored long-sleeve t-shirt. Our usual routine for Halloween was to meet up at my place around 5 p.m. with our costumes and candy sacks, then head out once it got dark and trick-or-treat until we physically couldn't carry any more candy. At the end was the grueling walk all the way back to my house, where in the past, when we were closer, we would all sleep over. Nobody wanted to disturb our parents in the middle of the night for a ride home, and we never carried enough change to catch the night bus. That night, we didn't call it until we were a 45-minute walk from my house. It was dark, but it wasn't scary with all of us together, until we saw something none of us will forget. We came across a fence by the sidewalk, and from a distance, it looked like somebody had hung up a crazy Halloween decoration of a woman's bloody corpse hanging from it. However, as we got closer, it seemed more and more real. The moment we walked past it, she snarled. We all ran off screaming. The sound she made was like a zombie choking on blood. A block down the road, we finally stopped to catch our breath and talk about what happened. We couldn't decide if it was a really convincing animatronic or an extremely dedicated prankster waiting for people to walk by. Either way, all of us were uneasy and wanted to keep moving. Unfortunately, not long afterwards, Ryan and Jesse decided to split off and go in a different direction because their houses were down another street. Normally, we would all go to my house together. I wasn't able to convince them otherwise, so then it was just me and Mike. Mike also warned me that we would split up soon. I tried to lure him into crashing at my place, but he said he would get in trouble with his parents if he didn't get home. A few minutes later, Mike went his own way too, and I was alone on the deserted streets. Gradually, as I walked alone down that dark road, my sulking and self-pity eventually gave way to anxiety. I had never been alone at night so far from home, and I definitely hadn't planned to do it for the first time that night. I felt mad at my friends for abandoning me at first, but every time I blinked, I saw that horrid woman on the fence screaming in my face. I still had to walk another 20 minutes to get home. That was more than enough time for something else even more horrifying to happen. Finally, I admitted to myself that I wasn't just afraid, I was on the verge of a panic attack. My heart was beating out of control, and despite the cool temperature, I was sweating through my shirt. I started power walking so I could get home sooner, but that only made me feel like I was running from something. Paranoia set in. I was convinced that every sound in the distance were the footsteps of somebody following me. I kept telling myself that I was overreacting and being stupid, but no matter how hard I tried to rationalize my surroundings, it felt like doom was growing closer with every second. Then, just 5 minutes away from home, I saw him, a tall, skinny man standing on the sidewalk ahead of me. I couldn't make out whether it was a super thin man in a Slender Man costume, or if it was a Slender Man decoration. Before I could even register the possibility of danger, my legs had carried me halfway in. I forced myself to slow down. Unfortunately, there was no way for me to turn off onto a trail or another street to go around it. I forced myself to slow down. My right side was blocked by another fence, and to my left was the street. I moved forward with caution, thinking about crossing to the other sidewalk to avoid getting close, even when I was unsure if he was a threat. I was trying hard not to overreact due to the panic and stress coursing through my body. And yet, when I got close enough, my fears only seemed to come true. I realized that it was in fact a man, and there was no costume. He was pale and lifeless, but worse, he was covered in blood, and I mean drenched in it. By then, he had noticed me, and he was staring at me with a look of pure evil hatred. His gaze made me freeze. There was no chance on earth I was going to walk past him, even if he was just wearing fake blood and had a convincing psycho act that he was terrorizing me with. I tried not to move too suddenly as I continued to cross the street. On the other side, it was obvious that he was still staring at me. I refused to make eye contact with him. I could see him in the corner of my eye, just watching me go by. My heart beat harder and harder until I thought it might explode. And then, right as I was directly across from him, he ran toward me. I instantly dropped my candy and fled for dear life. Every cell in my body was working to get the hell out of there. I didn't slow down or even look back until I got home. Then I barged inside and locked the door immediately. I made my way to my room and looked out my window. Luckily, nobody was there. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Sometime the next morning, I got a call from Mike. He told me to turn on the local news. What I saw almost made me pass out. The headlining story was that of a woman who was found dead hanging from a fence. I knew instantly that what my friends and I saw as some kind of Halloween prank was actually that very same woman. The guilt of not acting to find help still weighs on me, but more so does the knowledge that I was also inches from death, because the face of the man they caught for doing it, her boyfriend, was the same face of the man I saw that night while I was alone. Around the Halloween of 2015, a creepy woman decoration was found hanging from a chain-link fence within the neighborhood. A few pedestrians passed by thinking it was just merely a Halloween decoration, which was not uncommon this time of year. Later on, authorities were alerted about the hanging woman decoration, and it was discovered that this was in fact the real deal. Authorities identified the woman as Rebecca Cade, a woman who neighbors and family members disclosed as someone who battled with narcotics, but was a sweet girl. The woman allegedly got into a fight with a man named Donnie Kokenauer Jr. the night before she died. Kokenauer was arrested on the charge of murder on the following evening. According to authorities, she was running from him and got caught in the fence. Police later found a bloody boulder nearby. I had been working as a social worker in Texas for a while. I lived in the countryside in a pretty typical house. It was the cliche Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe. My job meant that I had to check up on a lot of elderly, poor, disabled people that lived in government-funded housing or apartments in my area. I typically had to check on each case about once a month, but since I had so many different cases, I was out visiting people fairly often. I was always encountering the weirdest people, just like in the movie. Sometimes it made me feel like an outcast. There were a lot of mentally challenged or disabled people that weren't able to work, and I had a soft spot for those types. My mother had a disability that prevented her from working. She was the reason that I'd gotten into this line of work. But a lot of the time, the job was very unsettling. There were very few days where I didn't have to check on someone that really creeped me out. These were the people that made me feel like I was in an asylum. They were usually homeless people or crackheads. It was a rough job. There was this one couple that made me feel especially unsettled. It was this creepy old man and woman. They lived way out in the middle of nowhere, in this really old house that reminded me of a horror movie. Every time I checked on them, I would hear them inside before they even opened the door. They were constantly arguing and throwing stuff at each other. They both got into physical and verbal fights multiple times a day. It was horrible. One night, I paid the couple a visit. I heard the usual stuff from inside. They were fighting again. I expected it, of course, so I tried not to let it bother me. I knocked on the door and prepared myself for dealing with them. But as soon as I knocked, they grew quiet. There was total silence inside. This had never happened before. I knocked again. Still no response. Not a single sound. I was starting to get annoyed because I would have to revisit them the next day if I couldn't get an update from them, and I didn't want to go back there. Plus, I just heard them inside, so I knew they were home. I just wanted to get it over with. I knocked again and tried to talk to them through the door. Hello? I know you're in there. Open the door. Then suddenly, I heard a motor sound coming from inside. It sounded like a lawnmower, but it was coming from right behind the door. I slowly backed away, very confused. Then the door swung open. The old man was standing there holding a chainsaw. He was just staring at me with the chainsaw running. I had no idea what was going on. What are you doing? He raised the chainsaw over his head and started running at me. I got the hell out of there and ran as fast as I could. As I ran, I looked over my shoulder and saw the old man chasing me. He started screaming things at me and told me that he was gonna cut me up into pieces. You're gonna die! You're gonna die! I'm gonna cut you up into pieces! Die! 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 I had never been more scared in my life. The man chased me through a crop field nearby until I finally dove into a tall patch of grass and hid from him. I lay there for what felt like an hour, but the man eventually went back home and I got away. The next day, I went back to the house with law enforcement. I was pretty nervous, but I figured I'd be safe with the police there. Plus, I wanted to make sure that couple was dealt with before that crazy man actually did kill someone. The officers and I slowly approached the house, keeping an eye out for the old man. As we got closer, I noticed that the house was still totally silent. There was none of the usual screaming and arguing coming from within. The officers knocked on the door and announced themselves, but they got no response. It was still completely silent inside. They tried again. Police! Open the door! I expected the same silence, but this time the old man responded from behind the door. He told us to leave him and his wife alone and to get off his property. Leave me and my wife alone and get off my property! Sir, this is a mandatory welfare check. Please open the door. No, get off my property! Sir, if you don't open the door, we will have to break it down. The officers kept arguing with him until the man finally opened the door after they threatened to break it down. The old man was standing there alone. His wife was nowhere to be seen. I asked the man where his wife was, but he didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. The officers decided that this was enough for them to be able to search the house without a warrant, so they went inside. The old man didn't try to stop them. I was still pretty freaked out by everything that was going on, but I had a strong urge to find out where the wife was. The whole situation didn't feel right. I slowly walked into the house after the officers. It didn't take us long to find the answer. There were 2 garbage bags in the kitchen that looked suspicious, so we checked inside. They were filled with the wife's contents. A bloody chainsaw was found in another room. The old man was arrested immediately. It appeared that he and his wife had gotten into a fight the night before after being heavily under the influence. The police still aren't sure if he killed her on purpose or if it was an accident. Either way, the results were horrific. I ended up quitting my job and moving out of Texas. I'm still traumatized by what happened. I can't hear the sound of a motor without reliving the whole ordeal. A 60-year-old ambient man named Edward was arrested on July 3rd of 2022 after deputies found a corpse in his home who was allegedly his girlfriend. According to Indiana State Police, during a welfare check, Edward answered the door and confessed to the tragic incident, which he claims happened over a small physical altercation after being under the influence with his girlfriend. She was then unresponsive. Edward then claims that he didn't want to call 911 because they couldn't do anything to help since she was already quote-unquote gone. This led Edward to take matters into his own hands by using a chainsaw and putting the evidence in garbage bags. In 2021, Halloween fell on a Sunday. My friend Ren told me about the Western concept of trick-or-treating, where you can just walk around and ask people for free candy. I thought the idea of getting free stuff just for wearing a costume sounded pretty good. Naturally, I agreed to go with him. I was Batman and he was Robin. The trick-or-treating event was being held in a rich and fancy suburb not too far away. Robin and I took the subway and met at the station, then walked the rest of the way. On the way out that night, everything was packed. The train was crammed full of people and so was the station. The streets were crowded too, especially once we arrived at the trick-or-treating neighborhood. There were lines of people waiting at the doors of all these big rich people's houses. A few very awkward hours later, and our sacks were full of candy. Robin and I had left the neighborhood and walked back to the station. Once his train arrived, we parted ways. I only had to wait another few minutes for my train. But in that time, I noticed something very strange. Everything was emptier now. Altogether, there were only about a dozen people waiting, most of which were in costumes. However, only one of those people was a cause for concern. A guy dressed as the Joker was standing about 3 train cars lengths away with an angry look on his face, staring at the wall in front of him. The costume was so realistic that it was genuinely scary, like Heath Ledger himself had been resurrected. Several people tried to come up to him and ask for pictures, but he shooed them away like pigeons and screamed at them. Everyone got the message to stay away from him, but I couldn't help staring at him. That's when he turned his head to look at me and twisted his face into a perfect Joker smile. It sent chills down my spine. I looked away and ignored him until my train came. The thought crossed my mind that I should wait for the next train, but I disregarded the idea because I was more concerned with getting home soon. I was very tired and wanted to sleep, although I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was wrong with that guy. However, I had quite a few stops to go until I got off the train. After just a few minutes, I started to doze off slightly. I thought I was starting to dream and was hearing distant screaming as a part of some mini stress nightmare. But suddenly I realized those blood-curdling screams were real. I shot awake right as a man covered in blood ran past me. I almost thought it was part of his costume until a second person ran by. A moment later, the pungent smell of gasoline hit my nose and I heard someone laughing. I looked down to the end of the train car and saw him, the Joker, a bloody knife in one hand and an overturned fuel can in the other. Everyone else had already run to the other cars to get away from the Joker, who now had me in his sights. It finally dawned on me that I was Batman. He was coming for me. Why are you looking at me like that, Batman? Aren't you gonna try and stop me? What are you talking about? Why are you doing this? The Joker left the fuel can on its side on a chair, letting it pour out the rest of its contents. Then, he began to walk forward. I jumped from my seat and spilled my candy sack all across the floor. I walked backward, not letting him out of my sight. Only a few steps later, and I was blocked by the door. The Joker pulled out a lighter and lit the flame, then threw it behind him and ignited the giant puddle of gasoline. What's wrong, Batman? Are you scared? I thought it would be harder to kill you. Don't disappoint me! I opened the door and ran away. The Joker chased after me with his knife, but I managed to stay ahead of him until I ran to the last car on the train. All of the other passengers were hiding there too, many of them bleeding from stab wounds. My stomach dropped as I realized we were trapped. We had nowhere else to run. But then, at the last second, right as the Joker appeared in the train car, the train came to a stop and the doors opened. Everybody ran for their lives, and if they were injured, somebody helped them escape. I got as far away as fast as I could. At the bottom of the stairwell, I had the nerve to take a look back. The Joker was strolling out of the flaming train, preferring to take in the sight of all the chaos he had caused rather than create more. He looked directly at me and smiled, and I took that as my sign to keep running. I got dumped out in a completely different neighborhood and the subway system shut down because of what happened. So it took me another hour to figure out how to get home on the bus. Afterwards, I couldn't even sleep. I've dealt with nightmares and flashbacks about that night ever since. I'm ashamed to talk about the trauma I went through because I regret not doing more to stand up to that maniac. However, I finally admitted to myself that I need to talk about what I went through. As for the Joker, the police apprehended him in that very same subway station not long after I escaped. But even then, I don't think the actions of a person like that will ever be explainable to a normal person. On October 31st of 2021, at around 8 p.m., a 24-year-old man named Kyota Hattori carried out a knife and arson attack on a railway train traveling in the western suburbs of Tokyo, Japan, injuring 17 people. The man was arrested at the scene and was allegedly wearing a Joker costume. Police say the suspect told them that he quote-unquote adores the Joker character from the Batman films and wanted to harm multiple people and receive the death penalty. In the video, you can see the passengers desperately running for dear life, trying to get away from the crazed man. You can see people even trying to crawl their way out through the subway windows. The man they referred to as the Joker was later sentenced to 23 years for his heinous actions. This all happened a few years ago when I was in high school. That year, Halloween happened to fall on a Friday, right after school. I always went trick-or-treating with my two friends, Nick and Kenny. We'd known each other for years and did most things together. We had agreed to meet at a local neighborhood park before we started going to different houses. The three of us had decided to cheap out on costumes and just wear the same mask from last year's Halloween. I was going as Jason Voorhees, Nick was going as Freddy Krueger, and Kenny was going as Ghostface. I was pretty excited for that night. I liked walking around at night with my friends, and coming away with a huge bag of candy was also a plus. When I got home from school, I quickly ate dinner, showered, and got ready. I made sure not to eat too much at dinner, because we were all planning on gorging on our candy afterwards, and I didn't want to be too full. When it was around evening time, I got my candy sack and Jason mask, texted my friends that I was leaving, and started making my way toward the park. I had thought we were meeting pretty early, but there were already a good amount of people trick-or-treating around the neighborhood. I got to the park and waited for Nick and Kenny to show up. A few minutes later, they walked up together and we started going house to house. Our goal was to get our sacks as full as possible. A couple hours later, it was getting late and I was starting to feel pretty tired. By then my bag still wasn't completely full, but it was full enough to where it was heavy as hell. It was to the point that the crew and I had to hold our sacks over our shoulders, Santa style. I asked to go home, but Nick and Kenny kept insisting that we had to trick-or-treat more, despite our bags being heavy and it getting very late. I didn't want to walk home by myself, so I stayed with them as they continued. As we went on, we started to notice that houses were turning off their lights, indicating that they were out of candy. But there was still one house with its lights on. We decided we would hit that house, then head back to my place and start eating all of our candy. We walked up to the house and knocked on the door. It was answered by an incredibly creepy old man with the meanest, creepiest look on his face. He didn't even need a mask. His face was horrifying enough. The man didn't even have a bowl of candy in his hands, which was alarming. He didn't even say hello either. He just stood there staring at us with this psychotic face. We all said trick or treat, thinking that he somehow didn't know why we were there. But the man stood still and kept staring at the three of us. Then he suddenly said something like, "Come inside. I left my candy in the kitchen." Of course we said no. There was no way we were going into this guy's house. I really didn't like the feel of him. His voice sounded strange too. It was like he didn't use it enough. The man kept insisting that we come inside. He told us that he would give us all of the candy he had left since we were the last ones out. We declined again. I felt uncomfortable as hell over how he kept bribing us. Finally, he gave up trying to get us inside. "Okay, wait here then. I'll go get it." The man walked into his kitchen and then came back with a big bowl of candy. He then grabbed handfuls of it and stuffed it into each of our bags until the bowl was empty. It ended up filling all three of our bags to overflowing. The man seemed to brighten up after this and said Happy Halloween as we thanked him and left. He didn't seem so bad anymore. I felt a little guilty for judging him so early. He had given us a ton of candy after all. The three of us headed back to my house. It was really late by then, but Nick and Kenny were planning on spending the night anyway, so we weren't too worried about it. When we got to the house, we started going through all of our candy in the basement. It had been a great night for all of us. We each had several whole candy bars from other houses, plus all of the candy from the old man was really nice. We started digging in and enjoying ourselves, happy that we had decided to go to the man's house. After a little bit, I went upstairs to the kitchen to grab some soda for the other two. But suddenly, as I was heading back, I heard a blood-curdling scream coming from downstairs. I never heard either of my friends scream like that before. I raced downstairs to see what had happened. There I found Kenny laying on the floor with his mouth bloody. Nick was staring at him, frozen with horror. I screamed in terror, not knowing what was happening. Then Kenny spit a razor blade out on the floor. One of Kenny's candies must have contained a razor. I quickly ran to tell my parents and they called the cops. My dad drove Kenny to the hospital. When the cops arrived, they checked all of our candy and found dozens more razor blades all throughout it. I realized that it had to have been from the old man. I told the police about the man and they were eventually able to track him down and arrest him. Apparently, he had been doing it for a while. I was traumatized by the whole ordeal, but I knew I was lucky that Kenny was alive and that Nick and I hadn't also eaten the tampered candy. I'm still very grateful that we hadn't gone inside the man's house. I don't know if we would have lived to tell about it. On the Halloween of 2019, dozens of shocked parents found razor blades in their kids' candy baskets in Waterbury, Connecticut. Waterbury police received 2 complaints of razor blades in the candy bags of multiple trick-or-treaters in the area. Investigators determined the razor blades came from the same home and were later able to identify the culprit. A 37-year-old man named Jason Raz was arrested the evening after. The man claims the blades had accidentally slipped into the candy bowl. The man has since been charged accordingly for his heinous actions.
I feel like we're missing a few families. There's the Johnsons, front and center as always, and of course, over there, the Andersons, keeping their distance from the Johnsons. I wonder if they'll ever get over that little feud of theirs. Wait a second, is that the Cornelius family? I haven't seen them in months. What happened? Their daughter looks sick. What was her name again? I forget. Excuse us, Father. May we have a word with you? Of course. Follow me. Tell me what concerns you. We need your help. It's about our daughter, Mary. Yes. How are things?
Mary has been possessed.
There's no such thing.
You have to believe us. I never thought demons were a real thing until one of them took control of my daughter. We need you to perform an exorcism.
What? That's, I'm sorry, but such practices are no longer considered safe. To perform an exorcism is against the policies of the church. I simply can't do it.
Please, Father, you have to help us. It's our darling baby girl we're talking about here. Won't you save her?
I'm deeply sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Cornelius, but exorcisms are highly unethical. I don't care about ethics. I care about the health and safety of my daughter. I'm willing to pay any price under the table to make it worth your while. I can't accept bribes, Mr. Cornelius. How about this? I'm leaving my daughter in your hands. I don't care what happens, as long as she returns to us without that damn demon inside of her. Get it? Alright, leave her with me. Go on home and call me tomorrow. For now, Mary can sleep with the sisters in the covenant.
Oh, thank you, Father. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Stay calm. This is all part of the process. Stop it! Just be still! You have to be restrained. Calm down!
I can hear your thoughts, you creep. I know what you really want with the girl. You're worse than me.
Shut up! I don't know what you're talking about. Goodness, you are possessed. Where'd that Bible go? In the name of the Father, of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I command the vile presence before me to heed the word of God. Release this woman from your grasp, evil one. Disgusting.
That's when I think of your puny words of God. You're no God. You'll never be worthy enough to speak for him.
Silence, demon! You will heed me!
What are you gonna do?
Oh, Heavenly Father, I beseech thee, send your holy emissary, Jesus Christ, down upon the devil's vassal and expel its evil essence from the body of the innocent!
You have no power over me.
The power of Christ compels you!
Nice try, loser.
The power of Christ compels you!
You deadbeat father! I'm taking you down to hell with me for what you did!
No, how? It's not possible!
You're mine, creep!
That's holy water, you wench! You're mine now! If you won't take it on the bed, then we'll try this!
You're scum, just like me. You're unforgivable.
That's enough out of you. I need time to reconsider the treatment of your condition. You're better than this. Don't listen to that wretched demon. All he knows is lies. Hello? Who is this?
Good evening, Father. We wanted to call to check in on our daughter. How's she doing?
Check back in 3 days. What's happening to me? Why can't I move? Somebody please help me! I'm gonna die down here. No, it's that girl. Damn her! I can't believe she did this to me! How?
A priest has been arrested under charges of false imprisonment. Police officials say the family of the victim, a 23-year-old woman, asked the priest to perform an exorcism on their daughter. Instead, she was tied to a cross and left in a dark room in the basement of the church for 3 days. During that time, the priest disappeared. Officials have not yet released any other information pertaining to what was done to the victim. The family has asked for privacy during this time.
In 2005, an allegedly mentally ill nun named Maricia began hearing voices at a Romanian church. She thought it was the devil talking to her. Although she was treated for schizophrenia, she relapsed and was then the subject to an exorcism. Bound to a cross, gagged with a towel, and left in a dank covenant room for 3 days without food and water, the nun sadly passed away, and the case was widely publicized in the Romanian media. Following a lengthy trial, a priest named Father Daniel Coraginu, the individual responsible for the exorcism, was jailed for 7 years. Many of the nun's family believed her to have suffered from demonic possession.
Back when I was in my early 20s, I went on a trip to Mexico with my best friend Kylie. We each got our own room just so we could have more space. It was a lower-end hotel, but the rooms were cheap and it was decent. We really couldn't afford any better at the time. We went towards the end of October, around Halloween time. Mostly, we were just going to party and cut loose. We didn't have a ton of plans or sightseeing that we wanted to do. When we got to the hotel, we were pleased to find that it actually looked a little better in person than it did online. It wasn't a resort, but it wasn't a total dump at least. We headed to the front desk to check in and ran into this creepy-looking guy there. He kept checking us out and staring at the both of us hard and kind of eerily. We were both pretty grossed out by him. He was obviously a creep. He advanced toward us and seemed like he wanted to say something, but we ignored him and tried to check in as quickly as possible so we could walk away. The man checked out and seemed like he was going to leave, but instead stayed in the lobby and kept staring at the two of us. We checked in and were escorted to our respective rooms. We were both happy to get away from the man. We decided to meet in the hallway a few minutes after we had gotten settled in each of our rooms. When I got into mine, it seemed clean and tidy, but it had the worst smell ever. It was absolutely foul. I almost felt sick because it was that bad. I called the front desk to complain and requested another room, but they told me that the hotel was completely booked. They suggested I just open a window to air the room out. I was pretty upset, but I didn't really have a choice. There was nowhere else to stay. I opened up the windows and headed over to Kylie's room to let her know what was going on. She said that she was sure opening the window would do the trick and I didn't need to worry about it. I was still annoyed, but I didn't want to let it ruin our vacation, so I tried to follow her advice. The rest of the day we explored the town and hung out in Kylie's room while we waited for my room to air out. Later that night, when it was time to sleep, I headed back to my room. I hoped that the odor would be gone, but it was somehow even worse. Opening the window had done nothing. I really didn't want to sleep in there, but I didn't want to make Kylie share a bed with me, so I tried to make the best of it. About an hour or so later, I had finally managed to fall asleep despite the smell. That's when I was awoken by a knock at the door. It was around 2 in the morning. I figured it had to be Kylie, so I headed to the door to open it. I checked through the peephole real quick to find out that it wasn't Kylie outside at all. It was the same creepy man who had been checking us out earlier. I was freaked out that he was outside my room so late at night. My first instinct was to call the front desk for help, but I stupidly decided not to say anything and hoped that he would just leave. That's when the man knocked even louder and said, "Open the door! I forgot something in the room after checking out earlier." I started to feel creeped the hell out, so I called to the front desk to ask for help. The man banged even louder. The doorknob began to rattle and it sounded like he was trying to break down the door like some psycho. I screamed for help, saying,
Help! He's breaking in!
Then suddenly, the banging stopped a few minutes later. The hotel staff and Kylie came to check on me not long after, but the man was nowhere to be found. The staff assured me that they would investigate the matter the next day and said that I should try to enjoy the rest of my stay. I didn't get much sleep that night. The next day, I told Kylie that I was skeptical that the staff would actually do anything about what had happened, but she convinced me to move past it. I reluctantly agreed. We were there to have a good time after all. Throughout the rest of our stay, we never encountered the man again. We had a great time going to different parties and celebrating Halloween, but every time I went back to my room to sleep, the smell had only gotten worse. One night, it was so bad that I threw up after being in the room for only a few minutes. I called the staff again and complained. I begged them to clean the room or check the vents or something. There had to be a way to get rid of the smell. They finally agreed and told me to wait in Kylie's room for an hour or two while they sent some maids to take care of it. I was happy that they were finally doing something about the problem and waited eagerly with Kylie while they cleaned the room. An hour later, the staff called and told me something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The maid said that they had found a dead body under my bed. That was what had been causing the smell. It had been there the whole time we were there. They checked the security cameras and all the latest check-ins to find out who could have left the body. It was revealed that the same creepy man from before had checked into the very same room with the woman, who eventually was the only one to check out. Ever since that time, I've been traumatized around Halloween. It was a constant reminder that I had slept in the same room, on the same bed, literally inches away from the body. This story was inspired by a disturbing, real-life Halloween incident that happened in Mexico in 2016. Around the time of Halloween, several guests had checked in and out of a room from a hotel called Hotel El Senador. The visitors all complained about the smell. After about a week leading into the beginning of November, the maids looked where they obviously had not been cleaning. That's when they found a dead body under the bed, wrapped in plastic. The body belonged to a woman which identity remains undisclosed. The visitors had no idea they were sleeping with a dead woman, but the last guest felt something was just not right after checking out. Hotel staff said the woman checked in with a man but never checked out. There have been no updates regarding any possible suspects since. In 2017, I had an encounter that ruined trick-or-treating for me. I was already starting to get a little old for it, but this was the nail in the coffin. Early in the night, I walked alone from my house to my friend's house so that we could go trick-or-treating together as Dragon Ball characters. I was Goku and he was Vegeta. There were a handful of people out on the streets wherever I walked, so I felt relatively safe. The one thing that gave me a bad feeling was the car I saw slowly cruising through the neighborhood, like it was surveying the neighborhood. I took note of it because I saw it loop around the same block 2 or 3 times on my walk, but it never stopped to get candy from any of the houses. It was a sketchy beat-up blue Nissan sedan. I didn't want to get caught staring, so I never got a good look at the person who was driving it. Overall, I tried to ignore it. I eventually got to my friend's house, where I told him about the weird car I saw so we could keep a lookout for it. My friend told me to stop worrying and that it was probably a parent looking for their kid or something. We moved on and got started roaming the streets with our empty pillowcases, but we were pretty disappointed by the number of houses that were actually celebrating Halloween. On average, only a couple of houses on every block were decorated and handing out candy. Most people weren't even opening their doors and had just left out bowls. This made us kind of annoyed, because barely anyone was seeing the costumes we spent a lot of time and effort perfecting. It took us 2 hours and a lot of walking just to get a significant amount of candy in our sacks. And then we realized we had to turn around and walk all the way back to our houses. We took a couple of extra detours on the return trip to get some extra candy out of the night. But by then, almost everyone had turned their lights off. The whole night felt pretty crappy. It was already the worst Halloween ever, and I had no idea how much worse it was going to get. After a while, we finally made it back to our part of the neighborhood. We reached my friend's house first, so we said goodbye and he went inside. Then, I had to walk the rest of the way home by myself. I didn't mind as it was only a few minutes, but by then, the night was totally dead. Everyone had turned their porch lights off and nobody was out walking the street except for me. Before long, I was back on my block in just a few seconds from my door, but then my heart dropped to my stomach as I heard a car pulling around the corner behind me. I instinctively knew it was the creepy blue Nissan I saw at the start of the night. I didn't even have to look over my shoulder. I recognized the sound of it. Psst. I tried not to act spooked and calmly continued walking toward my house. The car slowly drove behind me, getting closer. At last, I got to my house and walked up to my door. I was fumbling with my keys when I heard someone going, "Psst," trying to get my attention. I looked back and the car had stopped in front of my house. The window was down, and a creepy middle-aged man was smiling at me, leaning out the door and waving me over. Psst. I didn't want to go near him, but I felt like I had to talk to him or he would come back, since he obviously knew where I lived now. Reluctantly, I walked towards the car with caution, then stopped at a safe distance as the man said,
"Trick or treat. What do you want? Do you want some candy, kid?" No thanks. Get in. We could have a little hot box. I got that good stuff. Come on. I won't tell your parents. I'm not interested. I didn't ask. I'm telling you to!
In an instant, the man reached out of the car and grabbed my wrist. We got into a tug-of-war as I tried to break free, but he kept pulling me closer. I shouted for help, but nobody was around. Before I knew it, I was halfway into his car. At the last second, I pulled with all my might and kicked off against the car door, finally slipping out of his grasp. As soon as I was free, I sprinted back to my door and shoved the key inside. I rushed in and slammed the door behind me. Once it was locked, I looked out the window and saw the car driving off. I breathed a small sigh of relief, but I was extremely shaken up. For several minutes, I couldn't move. All I could do was sit on the floor in a ball and shake. I felt the urge to hide even though I knew I was safe in my house. I immediately told my parents and they freaked out. They called the police and made them do a full investigation. The police even interviewed me with a sketch artist and everything. I gave them every detail I could, but I never saw the man's license plate. Despite putting the sketch of his face and the details of his car on blast to the whole public through the news, they never found him. It's been almost 6 years now, and I've never gone trick-or-treating since. I've started just going to parties with friends and making sure I'm never alone when I'm out at night. Things started to get better for me once I finally moved out of my parents' house, because ever since it happened, I was terrified that the man would come back and try again. It's very hard to relax when you know that the guy who tried to kidnap you still knows where you live. However, even after I've gone to college, I still worry about that creep. All I know is that I don't feel safe with him or any kid for that matter trick-or-treating in our neighborhood. Every time I see a van, I think it's him again. A man is being sought after a teen trick-or-treater said he tried to kidnap him on Halloween in a neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida. Police released a sketch of the man wanted for questioning in the incident. The teen told police the man drove up to him and asked if he wanted to get in to use narcotics. When the teen refused, the man exited the vehicle and grabbed the boy's wrist, then tried to pull him inside. The teen pulled away, and the man left the area. He is described as white with a deep tan, about 5'8" with slicked back salt and pepper hair, and a tattoo of a cross with a snake around it on his left wrist. His vehicle was described as a blue 4-door Nissan Altima with a dent above the gas tank. The man has since been at large.
My wife and I had a beautiful daughter named Emily. She was the greatest thing in my life. We had a very close relationship and we would spend time together just about every day, even when she got older. We stayed close and I couldn't have been happier about it. Of course, that was before it all started happening. One year, when Emily was 18 or 19, she started to change. She no longer acted like the Emily that my wife and I knew. Instead, she became very angry all of the time. She would yell and curse at me for no reason. And she stayed in her room for hours at a time. My wife and I would try to talk to her, but it only seemed to upset her even more. She got worse and worse as time went on. She would constantly have panic attacks or fits of rage. She barely ate anything, and she didn't even seem to notice when people spoke to her. She was practically psychotic. My wife and I searched desperately for something to help our daughter. We went to multiple doctors and specialists, but none of them could help. They all said Emily was suffering from schizophrenia or some other mental disorder. One doctor even suggested epilepsy. No matter what treatment or medicine they tried, it practically had no effect. As soon as Emily was off it, she would go back to having spasms and anxiety attacks all over again. I didn't know what to do. It was all so horrible. One night, her spasms got so violent that I had to tie Emily down on her bed so that she wouldn't hurt herself. I ended up making her wear diapers and nursing her like she was in an asylum or something. My wife and I would clean her bed regularly and try to manually feed her, but whenever we got close, she would lash out and spit on us. She would vomit any food that we managed to make her eat back onto us. We didn't know how she would continue to survive in this state. She wasn't eating and she was barely drinking. She would spend the entire day strapped to her bed, screaming and cursing while she struggled to break free. My wife and I were miserable. We would cry together whenever we were away from Emily. Just felt so helpless. We even started sleeping with earmuffs because Emily wouldn't stop screaming throughout the night. I hated hearing her sound like that. She didn't even sound like herself. It was like another voice was coming out of her. Sometimes it even sounded like she was speaking in another language. I began to think that maybe it wasn't a mental disorder that Emily was suffering from. Weird, horrifying things would happen whenever I was in her room. Sometimes I would hear a voice coming from somewhere other than Emily. Then there would be times where lamps would fall over or other things in her room would be broken, even though she was always tied down. I wasn't a very religious person, but I had come to suspect that Emily could be possessed. I convinced my wife to let me call a local priest to come and perform an exorcism on Emily. I didn't know if I was right, but I was desperate. The priest came over the next day and began the exorcism. It was horrible and loud. Both he and Emily screamed for hours. The priest told me that he believed that Emily was indeed possessed by a demon. He said that he would need continuous time with Emily if he was ever going to be able to help her. It became a daily event. For over a week, the priest would come and perform the exorcisms. I would watch from a seat in the corner of the room, but my wife stayed downstairs. She said she couldn't bear to witness it. None of it seemed to work. If anything, Emily had only gotten worse since it started. She would lash out even more when the priest wasn't there, and she became more and more psychotic and violent. We could barely even recognize her anymore. It was the worst when the exorcisms were actually happening. Her face would become so creepy looking. Everything she did was terrifying. Her body would twist and writhe. She would moan and make strange noises that didn't sound human. I could hardly stand to see her that way. I was about ready to give up, but the priest begged me to let him continue. He was so certain that he could help her. One day, after the priest had been coming for close to a month, the exorcism went particularly badly. Right in the middle of the priest talking, Emily suddenly rose up into the air. Her entire body was levitating over her bed. Then, she started slamming up and down over and over again while she yelled in what sounded like Latin. I started to yell at the priest to stop what he was doing. But then, Emily suddenly broke out of her restraints and lunged at me. I screamed and panicked while I tried to fight her off of me. She kept trying to get her hands around my throat so she could strangle me. Finally, the priest was able to rip her off of me, and we managed to get her strapped back down onto the bed. I was horrified. The priest told me to leave the room and not come back until he was done. I ran the hell out of there as fast as I could. I found my wife downstairs and told her what had happened. We could still hear the priest continuing the exorcism above us.
The power of Christ compels you! Be gone, demon! Leave this body behind!
We stayed downstairs and cried until it was finally over and the priest left. He told us that it was far from over. After 100 more sessions, Emily was still no better. My wife and I were told to stay out of the room and let the priest work whenever he was there. We lost all hope, but we didn't know what else to do. Emily eventually passed. My wife and I were devastated, and we took out our anger on the priest. He promised to help us, and he failed. We blamed him for what happened. The police ended up looking into the case and arrested the priest for homicide, even though he continued to say that he was only trying to help. On July 1st of 1976, a German woman named Anneliese Michel went through a series of 67 exorcisms. She passed away due to malnutrition at the age of 23. The priest who exercised the exorcisms was held accountable for her death, ultimately convicting him of negligent homicide. Prior to the exorcisms, Anneliese was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis and had a long history of psychiatric treatment that proved ineffective. Movies such as The Exorcism of Emily Rose was believed to be inspired by Annaliese's case. Here is also an audio tape that was allegedly taken during her exorcism. The audio is highly believed on the internet to be of 6 demons that possess Anneliese. Here's what it sounds like.
This all happened last Halloween. My buddies and I weren't the best kids growing up. We were always in trouble in school and picking fights with other kids. We'd often blaze and do other things that our parents would frown upon. I guess pretty basic teenager stuff. My mom always told me that I went looking for trouble. She said someday it is going to catch up with me. I always laughed it off until that night. My 2 friends, Rick James and I, dressed up as inmates for Halloween. My friends thought it was funny and said that we were foreshadowing if we didn't get our acts together like everyone said. We always ended up doing the same general stuff on Halloween. That year was no different. We met up at the local park and blazed for a bit to get started. Then we went out into the neighborhood to trick-or-treat. We wanted to make sure that we filled up our sacks all the way, so we literally went to every house. It always took a while, but we loved the huge amount of candy after blazing. After we finished, we hit up an abandoned house that we all knew of in the neighborhood. It was our traditional spot to go to after trick-or-treating. It was a small, 2-story house that had been abandoned for years. Nobody knew why the house had been empty for so long. It was totally vacant. The 3 of us always visited the place every Halloween because it was so creepy. It was the perfect place to end the night. When we got to the house, we blazed again out front and then headed inside as usual to play a game of hide and seek. Typically, the game wouldn't be all that fun with 3 people, but the creepy house made it 10 times better. I was it that time, so I stayed outside while Rick and James hid. I counted to 10 and then headed in after them. The house was just as spooky and dark as I remembered. I was honestly a little creeped out walking through it alone, but I wasn't going to tell Rick and James that. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and started looking around for my friends. I didn't see either of them at first. They had done a good job of hiding themselves. It also didn't help that it had gotten pretty late, so the house was even darker. I could barely see anything besides what my flashlight hid. As I searched, I began to get more and more creeped out. I didn't really know why. why. I had been in the house many times before. It was just so eerily quiet for some reason. It was making me paranoid. I really just wanted to call out to Rick and James and be done with the whole thing. But there was no way I was letting them know that I was scared. They would have never let me hear the end of it. I forced myself to get over it and continue looking for them. I had searched downstairs for a while and still hadn't found either of my friends, so I headed upstairs. It was just as dark up there, and the stairs creaked loudly as I walked up. I made it to the top and looked around slowly with my flashlight. There was still no sign of anyone. Then I heard a noise come from one of the rooms. It was a sort of knocking, banging sound. I knew that it had to be Rick or James, but it still creeped me out. I took a deep breath and slowly entered the room. It was mostly empty, but there was still a dusty old bed in the middle. As I moved my flashlight around, I caught a glimpse of something moving behind the bed. I'd finally found one of them. I slowly crept over to look behind the bed and catch them. Then suddenly, something jumped out from behind the bed and leapt at me.
I've got you!
It was Rick. My heart was pounding like crazy, but I tried to play it off like I wasn't scared. Rick was laughing hysterically.
I got you so good. You should have seen your face.
Nah, I was just playing along.
Rick told me I was full of it and kept laughing. I was a bit embarrassed, but I was mostly happy to have finally found one of them. Now that I wasn't alone, the house had gone back to normal and I was having fun again. We started looking around for James together. Even with the two of us, we still couldn't find him. We looked for quite some time before we started to get bored and annoyed. Rick said that we should just say that James won and let the game be over with. I didn't have a problem with that, so we started calling out to him to let him know that we were done. However, he didn't respond. We went all over the house calling his name and got nothing. We figured he was just messing with us. Then finally, I went into a room that we had somehow missed and saw his head peeking out from behind some boxes. I called Rick and we both walked over to James behind the boxes.
All right, James, come on out.
He didn't say anything, so I touched his head. Then I heard James's voice from under the bed behind us.
I'm under here. We need to get the hell out of here now.
Rick and I spun around to look back at the head and saw the scariest face ever looking back at us. We all got the hell out of there and ran as fast as we could back to my house. We all caught our breath in the living room and started talking about what we had seen. Rick and I told James about the head, but then James told us something shocking. He said that when he went to hide under the bed, he saw a tall figure in another room, banging his head against the wall. We were all super freaked out by this and agreed to tell our parents and call the police. It turns out that the abandoned house had a decaying body in it, some man who had been missing for a while. We realized then that we had dodged a bullet with whoever was in the other room, because that could have been the man's killer. A Smithfield man missing since early October of 2022 was discovered dead over the weekend in an abandoned vacant house. According to police, a neighbor reported smelling a foul odor coming from the house nearby. They identified the body on Halloween night, October 31st, a 40-year-old man named Leondis, whose family had reported him missing on October 11th. Police have since been seeking the public's help on social media for any help or possible leads. Police have mentioned that there's no way to tell how long the body had been lying in the house, and that the house was open to the environment and not secured, leaving the possibility for any intruders.
I've been slaving away for Sir Topham Hatt for decades. I have no life outside of serving humans, taking them from point A to point B and back again, day and night. I only get time off from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. when there just aren't any passengers for a passenger train to serve. Sir Topham wants fares from the earliest commuters to the latest partiers, every single day. I have to make sure I'm on time no matter what happens, or Sir Topham will punish me. I'm terribly afraid of him, so I do everything I can to avoid messing up. I have fellow locomotives, but we never get a second to talk to each other. As soon as we're on break, we pass out until the workers wake us up again. I haven't had a friend since 1984. Work became even harder when they blocked off the second tunnel. But it's not the increased workload that weighs on me. It's Henry. I haven't seen him in ages. Henry and I used to be best friends. From the very beginning, we became close because Sir Topham had it out for us. I don't know why. Maybe it was because we were the lowest men on the totem pole or because we had the audacity to complain a bit too much. But either way, Henry and I had the most unforgiving schedule out of anybody. We ran routes all day and then we ran more at night. Nighttime was by far the worst part of our job. It wasn't just the constant berating from Mr. Topham or the unpaid overtime. Something weird would happen almost every night. There was this one really dark section of the tracks, halfway through the tunnel where we couldn't see anything at all. Mr. Topham never allowed us to have headlights because of budgetary constrictions, or whatever nonsense he was talking about. I never understood what it was at the time, but it always happened to me in the same spot. I would be rolling down the track at high speed, and then I'd hit a bump. Or more like a soft, wet thud beneath my wheel. When we got back to the station, the workers would quickly pull us aside and hose us down before anybody saw. This would happen to either me or Henry 3 or 4 times a week on a regular basis. We tried bringing this to the attention of Mr. Topham, but as usual, he didn't want to hear a word from us. He told us to keep quiet and to not tell any of the other locomotives about the wet thuds in the tunnel, or he'd send us to the scrapyard. As time went on, Henry and I began to dread going through the tunnel. We had our suspicions about what those thuds could be, but we never knew for sure until one night. I was loading up passengers for my last ride out of the station that night, when I saw Henry come out of the tunnel with a look on his face like he was about to throw up. I looked closer and saw something stuck to his grill, a baseball hat. Henry was shaking on his rails. Sir Topham was next to him, telling him something I was too far away to hear, but it looked scary. That night, around 3 a.m., Henry woke all of us up to tell us something. He told us that he finally figured out what the source of all those wet thuds in the tunnel were. I didn't want to believe him, but I had to. I knew Henry wouldn't lie, and I knew he wasn't crazy. He had a plan to make sure it would never happen again, but he needed my help to make sure it worked. I promised him I would do it, but I was too scared. That morning, when the time came to do it, I couldn't work up the courage. Henry rolled back into his station, but right before he exited the tunnel, he slammed on the brakes. I was supposed to leave the station and go into the other tunnel so they would both be blocked. That way no trains could go through. But I froze. I couldn't do it. The way Henry looked at me then, I'll never get it out of my head. I knew he would never forgive me for betraying him. A moment later, Sir Topham stormed up to Henry and started screaming at him. They went back and forth for a while, arguing over something.
Henry, what are you doing?
I'm not coming out of this tunnel until you take me off the night shift forever.
Nonsense! I said you work nights, so you work nights! That's it! Final decision!
Then you'll never move another passenger through this tunnel. My brakes are on and I'm not going anywhere. I'll die in here.
Oh really? So be it.
Seal off the tunnel! Wait, no, stop! I'll come out!
It's too late now, Henry. You wouldn't run over an innocent man, would you? That's what I thought.
The workers were just as under Sir Topham's control as us. They didn't bat an eye to burying Henry alive. Finally, I realized I had doomed my friend and tried to step in.
Sir, please stop this. If you don't, I'll have to— Silence! If you think squatting in the other tunnel means I won't seal you in there too, then you're wrong! Now get going! We'll have you torn apart in the scrapyard!
Yes, sir. Reluctantly, I did as I was told and moved forward into the tunnel, taking one last look at my best friend Henry before that tunnel was forever sealed off at both ends by a brick wall. What makes it even worse is that I don't even know if Henry had any passengers aboard when he was trapped. Even if he did, I'm sure Sir Topham wouldn't have cared. Decades later, the wall still stands, and I still do Sir Topham's bidding. Ever since I saw what happened to Henry, I'm too afraid to defy him. Everyone is. The wall is a constant reminder that Henry is still in there, rotting away. I do my night runs like a good train every night, no matter what I run over in the tunnel.
I hadn't been married for very long, only a couple of years. His name was Rob. It was really great at first. We were in love and our lives were simple. We weren't wealthy by any standards, but neither of us minded. We lived together in a trailer and that was plenty of space for us. Rob was a war veteran, so we got some money from his pension every month. The rest of our income came from Rob's business. He worked in a taxidermy shop that was right behind our trailer. That was the part about our relationship that I hated. Even in the beginning, I hated that he had to work in that shop. He always worked with this chainsaw that he'd use to butcher the animals, and I found it completely disgusting. Rob loved it though. He'd even hunt with it most of the time. Even though the other guys working there would use guns and other more normal methods, he refused. He always said that a chainsaw was all he needed. All of it really grossed me out. I hated the idea of him hunting deer with that thing. Plus, since our trailer was so close to the shop, I would hear the chainsaw running all the time while he butchered the animals that he had caught. One time I had visited him at work, but I couldn't handle all of the dead carcasses lying all over the place. They were everywhere. I never went back to that shop after that. Of course, there was still a smell of dead animals outside a lot of the time. It was all pretty scary, but it came with the territory, and it did have its perks too. Rob would often bring home venison for dinner, which was always delicious. It saved us money too, since we never really had to buy meat. After a time, I got used to all of the hunting and everything else that came with his job, as long as he did it outside the house, of course. Still, something about him having a chainsaw was very unsettling to me. Then things became more alarming as time went on. Rob seemed to get weirder and weirder the longer we were married. He also started to get more creepy. There were some days where he wouldn't even talk to me after he came home. But the worst part was his hygiene. When we were first married, he always made sure to clean himself up before he came home. But now he didn't seem to care at all. He would come home covered in blood and smelling absolutely horrible. It was partly understandable since he was a taxidermist, but I thought that he could have made more of an effort to be clean around me. I started to have some doubts about being with him, but I felt stuck. I really wanted to make the marriage work. Rob didn't seem to share my feelings though. He just grew more gaunt and weird as each day passed. We started to not get along anymore. It was subtle at first, but then we began having full-out fights with each other. I would complain about him coming home all filthy and he would tell me to mind my own business. We started yelling at each other on a regular basis. One day, we had an especially bad fight. Rob had come home very late and was filthy as usual. I hadn't even said anything before he started yelling at me, saying that I didn't support him enough. I tried to reason with him, but he was practically manic.
What do you want me to do? Quit my job? I provide everything for you!
I decided that I'd step out and visit my relatives for the weekend. I figured that we could both use some space for a few days. I had only been there for a few hours when I decided that I would go back that night. I didn't want to give Rob an opportunity to cheat on me. I headed back to the trailer pretty late. It was totally dark outside and awfully quiet. I tried to make as little noise as possible. After opening the door as slowly as I could to prevent it from squeaking, I decided not to turn on the lights in case Rob was asleep. I tiptoed to the washroom so that I could brush my teeth before going to bed. I figured it would be okay to turn on the lights in there, so I clicked them on and started to grab my toothbrush. I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, so I turned around to see what it was. But when I turned around, I saw the scariest thing ever. There was a fully grown deer just laying there in the bathtub. It was hacked up and severed all over the place, but somehow still alive. It started screaming at the sight of me. I was terrified. I ran out of the trailer as fast as I could. As I did, I saw Rob sitting on the couch in the dark, smiling like some psycho. I filed for divorce the next day. I later found out that Rob had lied to me about being a war veteran. He had never even been in the military. Also, much to my horror, he had been accused of killing 2 civilians in the past with a chainsaw. Somehow he had never been convicted, but there was no doubt in my mind that he had done it. I'm grateful that I had the instinct to divorce him. I always felt uneasy about the chainsaw. Now I realize that I could have ended up just like those 2 other victims. To this day, every time a new Chainsaw Massacre movie comes out, I'm reminded of Rob and everything that happened. I can't help but feel that the movies are about him. It's been a popular online conspiracy that a man named Robert Gleason was the inspiration behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. The animation pretty much sums up Robert's horrific acts carried out through the years in a nutshell. The image of Robert can be seen below. Here are the images of his 2 male victims. It just so happened that their fates were carried out in Austin, Texas, similar to the TCM movies, which is why fans believe the franchise was inspired by this downright disturbing case.
Hey everybody, meet Samantha. She plays the piano. This happened in the Halloween of 2022, when I had just enrolled in college. At the time, I was dating my girlfriend named Samantha. We had planned to go trick-or-treating on Halloween. She decided to dress up as a generic corpse-like costume, while I decided to go as Michael Myers from the Halloween movie. Initially, I had to convince Samantha to go trick-or-treating with me since she was hell-bent on not going. She avoided going due to a traumatic car accident that happened the previous Halloween, resulting in the death of her ex-boyfriend. Luckily, Samantha survived with minor injuries, but ever since the traumatic incident, she's been on the fence about any Halloween festivities. She copes with the loss by playing the piano often. Myself and her friends have since tried to get Samantha to move on from the past and not let the death discourage her from Halloween festivities. And so, Samantha agreed to go trick-or-treating with me, and even decided to go to a Halloween party that her friends were hosting. Of course, I agreed to go as her +1, and so that was going to be the plan. Fast forward to Halloween night, and myself and Samantha were out trick-or-treating. We must have been trick-or-treating for 3 hours straight, because our candy sacks were literally full to the brim. It got to the point where our candy sacks were so heavy that we had to carry them over our shoulders Santa Claus style. We eventually made it back to my place, dropped off our candy, and then started making our way to Samantha's friend's Halloween party. As we made our way there, we came across a home decorated like a haunted house. There on the porch stood a massive, large Pennywise clown waving us in like he wanted us to come inside. I wanted to check it out, but Samantha refused. Come on, babe, let's check out the haunted house.
Sorry, but there's no way in hell I'm going in there.
Come on, look at that creepy-ass clown. He put a lot of effort in this. We gotta go inside.
That's okay, you just go ahead. I'll wait out here.
Are you sure?
Come inside! I bet your whole mother says that often. Leave her alone. She's my girlfriend. Well, your Ice Spice-looking girlfriend is making something other float than my balloons. Leave her alone or I'm calling the cops! Suit yourself. Come inside, Michael Myers. Where the hell am I? This is scary as hell! Why did I agree to do this? Dude, please let me out! I don't want to play this game anymore! What the hell is going on?
Hey, babe. This is my friend's party that we were supposed to go to. I also dressed as a corpse to celebrate my ex's death.
The story was inspired by one of the most disturbing cases that happened around Halloween. A female named Mackenzie Shrilla had intentionally killed her boyfriend and their friend in a fatal car crash, and then subsequently dressed as a corpse for Halloween just weeks after. The suspect survived and spent weeks recovering at a hospital, but her passengers didn't make it upon impact. The motive was that she allegedly wanted to end her toxic relationship with the victim. The victim's name was David Flanagan, whom can be seen below. Prosecutors described the suspect as literal hell on wheels. It was reported that the suspect had booked a hotel room with her girlfriends and dressed up as a corpse, merely mocking the victim. The victim's mother has since expressed her anger, stating she thought she was going to get away with it. They were in a hotel room having fun. There was just no remorse. Dinner time was quiet that night. The night everything was ruined. Of course the food was good. I know because I made it myself. Refried beans, eggs, and of course, the locally sourced burgers that were the backbone of this now broken family. I remember when everyone was happy, when they all still loved me, when they respected me. They used to appreciate the things I did to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. But it's not like that anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. I could see it in their eyes. They all hated living in my house. They hated my food. They hated me. They couldn't even pretend to hide it anymore. Those worthless kids just picked at their food, pushing it around their plates, but never actually eating it. They wouldn't even take a single bite of the burgers I made, and it was a fresh batch. God, it was the most unbearable experience. Just sitting there in silence without even the sound of chewing if it weren't for Linda. At least that old ball and chain was still in it with me. We used to sit around the dinner table and tell jokes, laugh, make fun of each other, talk about random stupid stuff. But now it was just silence and those damn sirens. I can't stand them. It was like a car horn in my head every time, and it was really starting to mess with my head. I knew they could all tell too, which was just adding to the awkwardness. Finally, at some point I couldn't take it anymore, and I had a bit of an outburst.
Why isn't anyone saying anything? Somebody just say something, please!
Bobby, calm down, please. You're scaring the children.
I don't care, Linda. This is my house, and I say if they're scared, then maybe they'll actually speak.
Oh, come on, Bobby. Don't use that tone of voice at the dinner table. Not in front of the whole family. Save it up and use it on me later.
Fine, but only if we can do the thing.
Of course, we're gonna do the thing.
Ew, Mom, Dad, not right in front of us!
Be quiet, Gene. Eat your dinner.
He's right. Let's just sit back down.
Sorry, everyone. What I should have done was dole out some real old-fashioned discipline. That would have knocked some sense into them. And then my loser son would have never had the chance to cause any trouble. I was too soft on him. I told him so many times that he better eat everything on his plate or he wasn't gonna leave the table. But he would just whine and say something passive like, "Well, I'm trying," or, "But I don't like it." What a disgrace. When did I raise such a backstabbing little brat? He even had the audacity to ask the forbidden question. The one thing nobody is ever supposed to ask.
Dad, can we just eat something else for once?
How dare you say that?
Bobby, save it for the bedroom, remember?
Shut up and eat! I don't want to hear it! All of you! This table better be completely cleared off in the next 5 minutes! I'm tired of sitting here! I finished half an hour ago! That punk was testing me, defying me in front of my whole family. The disrespect! Challenging my authority like that? He was asking for hellfire to rain down on him. Gene, eat it! Linda, Louise, Tina, eat faster! And you, Gene, look me in the eye. Look at me! Do I look like you want to mess with me? Then eat the food. I finally had him where I wanted him, listening to me and following orders. I was this close to squashing any and all talks related to eating something else once and for all. But then... I can't! That ungrateful snot stain took one little bite and spat it right out, and puked over all the food. He then ran away screaming and crying like a big giant baby. At the time, I didn't know what he was thinking. There was nowhere he could run to where I couldn't get him. He was trapped in my domain. I stormed up those stairs and right to his door, ready to break it down in a heartbeat. But for some stupid reason, I gave him one last chance to come willingly. Gene, open this door!
Get away from me or I'm calling the cops!
Now those are really the words no one is allowed to say in my house, and for good reason. I begged him not to do it. I really groveled and pleaded with the kid. I think it really shows how kind and understanding I can be.
If you call the cops, I will personally grind you up and serve you all next week! Listen to me, you coward! I'll make sure you go in feet first so you have to suffer! It's too late, Dad! They're already on their way!
I snatched the phone out of his hand and taught him a much-needed lesson. But it was already too late. My son had already turned into a snitch and ratted us out. The cops came and swarmed us before we had time to get rid of all the evidence. I still can't believe it. My own son called the cops on me, destroying everything I built. All because he was tired of eating human burgers every day. And because it was morally reprehensible and unforgivable to go around town kidnapping people and grinding them into burger meat so I could eat them and serve them on a sesame seed bun. Give me a break.
I work as a priest for a fairly large church. Throughout the years, I have seen a great many things in my time serving the church. Some good, some bad. But this story is by far the darkest and most horrific event that I ever experienced. Everything that I am about to tell you is true. However, I would prefer to remain anonymous for this story due to my own personal reasons. If you must give me a name, you may call me Father A, for Father Anonymous. It happened a few years ago. One day I received a call from a local psychiatric ward. They were apparently having a problem with one of their patients. A woman by the name of Gina had been brought to them some time ago. The ward was told that she was insane and dangerous. After being examined, she had been immediately diagnosed as actively psychotic, and the appropriate treatments were begun. The problem was, no matter how much meds or therapy Gina received, she wasn't getting any better. The doctors described her as unhinged. At first I was confused as to why the ward was calling a priest to help with the patient, but then it all became clear. They believed Gina was possessed by a demon. Of course, the doctors were skeptical of this. They suggested that Gina was perhaps experiencing some new mental disease that their treatments didn't work on. They begged the ward for more time to treat her, but the head of the ward wanted to examine every possibility. That's why they had called me. They asked me if I believed that Gina could be possessed. I asked them to describe her behavior to me. I wanted to believe the doctors. It was certainly a less horrible explanation. But after hearing Gina's symptoms over the phone, I knew in my heart that the ward was right. Gina had been taken. I brought the matter before my church, and an investigation was begun. Gina was examined by multiple different priests and officials, myself included. The process took months. We wanted to be absolutely sure before we moved on to the next stage, but it soon became clear what had to be done. The church officials gave their approval for an exorcism. I was to perform it. What's more is that the entire ordeal was to be covered by ABC, so that they could film and document it. I had never performed an exorcism before. The thought terrified me, but I knew I had to try. I couldn't leave the poor girl to suffer, but it didn't comfort me that the entire country would be watching. When the day came, I prepared myself for the coming battle. I prayed the entire morning and into the afternoon. I could barely eat anything, I was so nervous. I gathered my equipment and all of the necessary items and arrived at the psychiatric ward that night. It was late, and the darkness seemed to follow me as I entered the building. I slowly walked down the hall to the girls' room. It felt like it took forever, but I knew it was only a few seconds. When I finally reached the door, I took a deep breath and pushed it open. I saw multiple people crowded into the relatively small space. Ward staff stood up by the walls ready to help me if I needed them. The ABC camera crew was all set up and ready to broadcast. I saw Gina's family in the corner as well. They looked terrified, but also hopeful. I couldn't let them down. Gina was sitting in a chair in the center of the room. At first, she seemed like she was asleep, but not long after I entered, her eyes opened, and she began to scream and wail. Her arms and legs flailed about, and she looked as if she was having a seizure. I ordered the ward staff to restrain her, and they grabbed her limbs and held her down in the chair. Gina began to scream even louder. She struggled violently, but she couldn't break free. I began the exorcism at once, seeing that time was of the essence. Pulling out my crucifix, I commanded the demon to leave Gina's body.
In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave! Now! Come out of her! Now! Out of her, demon! Leave! Leave this body behind!
This only caused her to struggle even more. She screamed and cursed at me. Her face twisted itself up and no longer looked human. I commanded the demon to leave again and again, but it had no effect. This went on for hours. I had never been more exhausted, but I wouldn't give up. Gina had only grown more intense and violent. Finally, I readied myself for one last push. I had the staff hold Gina even tighter. I forced her to look at me as I spoke to her. She thrashed and writhed about, almost knocking one of the staff members to the floor. Her eyes rolled back into her head and foam leaked out of her mouth. She suddenly began screaming different words at me. I had no idea what the words meant, but I knew it was the demon speaking through her. As I looked at her face, I had never seen such a horrible sight. I could only see the whites of her eyes, and her face was ugly and evil. I knew this was my last chance. I yelled above her babbling and pressed the crucifix to her chest.
I command you to leave in the name of Christ! Be gone! In the name of Christ, I command you to leave! Be gone, demon! Be gone!
Gina gave one last gut-wrenching scream and then collapsed. It was finished. I heard later that Gina reportedly came out of the exorcism in a much calmer state. She still needed 2 weeks in the psychiatric ward to recover from the whole ordeal. She continues to take antipsychotic medication to this day. I heard she's very happy now, and she's very thankful to God and to me for her liberation from evil. In 1990, a reverend performed an exorcism on a Florida teenager named Gina, which was televised on the ABC network. Strapped to a chair, Gina can be seen screaming and barking unintelligibly while the reverend pressed a cross into her face. Throughout the video, Gina can be seen thrashing and making ugly faces, yelling phrases like "stay away" or "I don't like you." Allegedly, the demons' names were Zion and Minga, which the reverend believed to be controlling her. After the exorcism, Gina reportedly came out in a calmer state, but needed 2 more weeks in the psychiatric ward and is now heavily on medication. Gina mentioned that she is very happy and thanks God for her liberation from evil. Nemo was the most important person in my life. Everything I did and all my plans were centered around Nemo. Without Nemo, I was nothing and could do nothing. After my wife and kids were taken away from me by the Barracuda, Nemo was all I had left. My desires in life after that were simple. No matter how much I wanted it, nothing would bring my family back, so I focused on Nemo. For years, it was just me and him. I guess you could say the isolation made me go a little crazy, but being a parent will do that too. All I wanted to do was get one single son or daughter of mine to reach adulthood, but it seemed like I was doomed to fail at that no matter what. I tried as hard as I could to keep Nemo safe, but despite all my efforts, one day, he disappeared. My fragile mental state was shattered all over again. I immediately went searching all across the ocean for him. I looked under every rock, inside every anemone, through every net full of fish. I chased after every boat, combed through every reef, and wailed into the abyss from every drop-off.
Nemo!
But no matter where I looked, I couldn't find anyone. Sooner or later, my physical health degraded along with my mental health. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I even forgot to breathe sometimes. I was so focused on the impossible task of finding Nemo. Eventually, I knew I didn't stand a chance of doing it on my own, so I sought help from others. Unfortunately, it seemed that every creature I encountered would rather eat me than help me. The crabs on the ocean floor just wanted to pick the flesh off my bones with their pincers. The sharks just wanted to swallow me whole with their putrid mouths full of all those teeth. There was no way I could take on any of those guys either. But even when I tried to talk to the sea turtles, who everyone says are supposed to be so wise, those lazy bums couldn't even tell their own flipper from a clump of kelp. And don't even get me started on the whales. Those guys are so big, they didn't even notice I existed. For weeks, I continued my search. I started having hallucinations of Nemo, which only added to my torment. I was ready to give up, to just let my body succumb to starvation. But then I saw her, the dumbest, most helpless fish I've ever seen. Yet somehow, I knew she was the one fish who could help me. Her name was Dory. In our first conversation, she forgot my name 10 times. I soon learned that she was incapable of holding on to a single bit of information for more than 30 seconds. However, I was glad to meet her. I had the feeling that she would help me a lot, even if I never found Nemo. Dory could help me learn how to forget, and then one day, maybe I could move on with my life. Maybe even start over with a new family. The crazy thing was, once I stopped endlessly searching, I realized I was swimming in a giant circle the whole time. How stupid is that? That's when Dory said her and I weren't that different, and I knew she was right. I invited her to come home with me, since she didn't have a family to go home to either. It was nice to finally have someone to talk to that didn't want to eat me or flat out ignore me. Even though she could never remember the last thing either one of us said, at least she had some semblance of who I was the whole time. She might never be able to remember my name, but there are perks to that actually. I didn't have any food in my house, but I had plenty of drinks. We shared what I could offer and talked about our lives all throughout the night. Unsurprisingly, a grieving father and a fish with severe short-term memory loss didn't take long to lose track of how much we were drinking. We got absolutely sloshed before we knew it. That's when I said something that I knew might be a mistake to admit. I have something to get off my chest. Please don't judge me too harshly. Nemo is dead. He's been dead the whole time. It's all my fault. I killed him. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just getting on my nerves every day. And then one day, I went into his room and saw him doing something that sent me over the edge. I grabbed a rock and...
It's okay, Martin. We all make mistakes. I'm proud of you for admitting what you did wrong. It takes a lot of strength. I just have one question. If he was dead this whole time, why did you go looking for him for so long?
Because his body is gone. I buried him underneath his bed and I would beg for forgiveness at his grave every night. But one morning, he just wasn't there. Somebody stole the only thing I had left.
That's not the only thing you have left, Marley. You got me now.
It's Marlin.
Right, Marlin. Let's go find your son.
Thank you, Dory. Let's start at the scene of the crime.
I showed Dory to Nemo's room. Then I let her go inside. I could tell she was afraid. She went inside slowly and cautiously, clearly very nervous about having her back turned to me. I told her I wouldn't hurt her and to keep going. She was scared out of her mind, but she listened. She crept up to the bed and looked underneath it, then froze. I knew what she was looking at. I'm the one who put it there. Nothing was there. There was no blood, no bits of rotting corpse, no worms, nothing but an empty, freshly dug hole.
What am I looking at?
Dory, do you know what Nemo means in Latin?
What?
Do you know what Nemo means?
No!
It means nobody! We were looking for nobody!
I seized the opportunity and shoved her into the hole. I then started shoveling in the dirt. I couldn't believe how long it had been since there was a smile on my face, but it felt even better than I remember.